As I feared, his fangs might even sink into the king. Ever since Pitou said this in chapter 306, fans have debated who was really the top dog of Hunter x Hunter, Adult Gon or Meruem. I've heard a lot of different arguments and opinions on the topic over the years, and I think I've come to a pretty conclusive and maybe unexpected answer. If you enjoy Hunter x Hunter versus battles, maybe hit the subscribe button and check out my other videos like Phantom Troop vs Pitou. With that in mind, let's get started. Of course, we need to start with the obvious statement made by Pitou, and that being that Gon's fangs could sink into Meruem. This statement is incredibly vague and could mean anything from Gon would bully Meruem outright or is just barely a threat to him with his Jajanken. In the anime, Pitou says the two are equals, however the manga is much more vague with many unknowns. The most realistic interpretation, in my opinion, is that Gon should at least be comparable to Meruem in physical stats and aura, while outstripping him with the Jajanken. The reason I think it's fair to include the Jajanken in Pitou's assessment is because she's already seen the technique before when she was healing Komugi, and the Jajanken is a pretty simple application of Nen. It's essentially just focusing all your Nen into your fist with a small charge time. Jajanken is considered more than a 10 times amp on Gon's raw power, with it allowing Gon to take down opponents well above his pay grade if he succeeds in using it, as seen with Genthru and Knuckle. However, Jajanken has its own issues, and those being that it's not at all that effective against someone well above his level physically and intellectually, as the only time Gon ever landed the attack was when he cornered Genthru or when Knuckle let him charge it up. Now we know Pitou wasn't just being overly cautious as the royals tend to do, but genuinely did see Gon as a problem. Before he even transformed, his potential scared her so much she vowed to unalive Gon before he could even meet the king, and later was grateful that she could sacrifice herself so Gon never went to Meruem. This is in stark contrast to her treatment of Chairman Netero and Zeno Zoldyck, who she kinda just let wander off with Meruem after he told her to save Komugi. If Gon was physically far beneath Meruem and was only a threat to him using Jajanken, I can't imagine Pitou would have had this intense of a reaction. It's also not really that crazy when you consider Meruem doesn't have too many feats in terms of raw physical strength, placing him above the Royal Guard. We never really get to see him just beat up a Royal Guard the same way Gon does outside of, the tail slap scenes. So saying Gon is in that tier based on feats seems consistent. Then is the matter of Meruem's intelligence that allowed him to see through Chairman Netero's nearly infinite attack combinations. While Gon is a smart kid, Meruem outsmarted the most skilled, intelligent, and experienced Nen user on the planet, and with his intelligence stats in the databooks literally being off the charts. As we know from the Knuckle fight, it's not all that hard to deal with Jajanken if you are exceedingly intelligent. However, it's not that simple either, as Meruem had to learn from his opponents to counter them. Against the Shogi World Champion, it took 10 games to learn his playstyle and how to counter it, and Netero landed thousands of attacks before Meruem found an opening. Unlike a Netero or a board game, Gon has the physical strength and power to seriously hurt Meruem with each attack, and while he's no genius, Gon is still a skilled martial artist and can use scissors or paper to catch Meruem by surprise like he did to Knuckle or Centipede. Even if they don't secure the win, it might help create openings. To sum it up, if base Meruem fought Adult Gon, Meruem wins if he can read Gon and consistently avoid Jajanken, where he'd eventually take down Gon by targeting his vital areas and making him bleed out or something, while Gon would need to maybe land a few Jajankens to finish things for good. This is about the same answer you'd get from most people, and while it's mostly okay, it misses out on a few key details. One of them being that Adult Gon actually gets a power-up after he first appears. I questioned this myself for a long time, but when Gon is going to deliver the last blow to Pitou, Killua says something interesting. No, don't use any more power, how much will you have to pay? This statement stuck out to me because it makes it seem as if Gon called upon even more aura to finish Pitou. I think most people ignore this as there's a misconception that his adult form is his max potential or something, when that's never stated. You need to remember that Adult Gon is simply Gon trading his Nen and his life to acquire power to defeat Pitou. That doesn't mean it's his absolute limit. He could increase the power level by increasing the consequences held against him. This makes sense when you look at Gon's feats in his adult form. At first, Gon needed several Jajankens to destroy Pitou's head, and a kick to base Pitou only drew blood. Pitou then gets amped by post-mortem Nen, becoming even stronger, yet Gon can pick up his own dismembered arm and shove it through Pitou's chest. The explosion from the final Jajanken also creates a massive blast that blows away the nearby forest, while earlier he just made a flash of light with little to no damage to the surroundings. Considering Gon's normal punches did even more damage to Pitou than his Jajankens were earlier, then Gon would have just gotten over a 10 times amp. Many people, myself included, would say Gon was just holding back to make Pitou suffer or something, but this doesn't really make sense to me, as if Gon wanted to do so, why would he use Jajanken to begin with? He's already far superior to Pitou physically to the point that one kick sends her flying, coughing up blood, let alone an amped attack like Jajanken. It doesn't make sense logically or within Gon's character to hold back, especially against Pitou, and especially considering he even turned into Adult Gon to begin with. He threatened to unalive Komugi just due to his bloodlust towards Pitou, let alone Pitou themselves. With all that in mind, full power Adult Gon would be way above base Meruem in terms of raw power. Low-balling, he was already a threat to Meruem the moment he appeared, and he's now 10 times stronger. His normal punches are stronger than a Jajanken, let alone the fact he can stop Jajanken on top of that for another 10 times. You might argue that Meruem's intelligence might give him the edge again, but it was already a close fight when Gon was much weaker. You need to remember that Meruem isn't Chrollo or Hisoka. He's a great problem solver, but he doesn't have abilities or hacks to help him fight people physically stronger than himself. All he could do to defeat Gon is to try to box with him and hit a vital point or something, which would end awfully. His strategy that beat Netero, which everyone hypes him up for, only worked because he was so much stronger than Netero. Against Adult Gon, every single punch is going to do serious damage. He doesn't have time to read Gon's rhythm before being overwhelmed by sheer power. If you don't buy into Gon getting another power-up after becoming an adult, then I'd still argue that Gon's feats are way above base Meruem. Pitou was already the strongest royal guard according to the manga and databooks, being the number 3 to Gon and Meruem, yet even after a post-mortem Nen amp, Gon can still dominate her with literally one arm, and completely punch a hole in her chest. Meruem just does not have a feat or anything that would suggest he can one-shot amped Royal Guard level characters. There's nothing to suggest it at all. Gon definitely has the feats argument over Meruem, and it's not really close. Gon destroying post-mortem Pitou might just be the best physical feat in the entire manga. This is spoilers for the Rose Meruem portion of the video, but later when Pouf and Youpi feel Meruem's aura when he comes back to life, it's stated that for the first time, they understood that it was possible to win a battle with sheer quantity of aura. This is a callback to Morel's opinion that aura levels don't matter in combat and the main factor is abilities and strategy. If this is the first time Pouf felt this way, it means they didn't even believe base Meruem was so strong he could beat them with raw aura. It's close enough he would need to use some kind of strategy to counter their abilities. Gon, on the other hand, already overwhelmed Pitou with raw aura alone, not once, but twice when they came back stronger. Overall, I think everything I've explained points to Adult Gon being much stronger than base Meruem in terms of feats, statements, the scaling, and the narrative. You might be saying that Pitou could chop Gon's arm off, so surely Meruem could as well, but as we all know, Gon allowed this to happen and he wasn't even looking at Pitou when it happened. Pitou was also amped, which I'm going to keep hammering that point in, so we don't actually know how strong Pitou was at this point. It's not an anti-feat for Adult Gon, and doesn't mean he'd lose if he was on guard against base Meruem. Now, we can get into Rose Meruem. But before we continue, I do have to mention today's sponsor, Manta Sleep. As you guys know, I'm a busy guy. I pull long hours to give you guys quality content. That means when it's time for my third nap of the day, I use Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep strives to give you higher quality sleep with a completely adjustable and comfortable design that means anyone can use it. And that's not even the best feature because the mask completely blocks out light, meaning you can use it night or day. Their website has a long list of great products that are also customizable. I'm personally a fan of the Manta Silk Sleep Mask, which is just really comfortable. I'm a person who really rolls around when I sleep, and this thing just stays on. Look, I'm gonna level with you guys. I wouldn't promote this product if I didn't actually like it a lot. The mask is genuinely really comfortable. It has these little pillows for your eyes that are just like really soft. And if you use discount code PROFESSOR at checkout or visit the link in the pinned comment, you will get 10% off your purchase. Better sleep awaits at Manta Sleep. Rose Meruem comes back after consuming a large portion of Pouf and Youpi, getting a noticeable power-up and acquiring several new abilities. A big debate I've seen with Rose Meruem is how much stronger he got exactly, with many people simply adding Pouf and Youpi's aura to Meruem's additively, when in reality it's more of an exponential increase. After first sensing Rose Meruem's power, Pouf, a genius, regards him as stronger than before. Yet later when Meruem flexes his nen, it's beyond Pouf's wildest imaginations. Given that Knuckle can measure how large certain aura amounts are, then Pouf should be able to make the pretty basic deduction that Rose Meruem is at least as strong as the three of them combined. Yet Meruem was still far above his expectations. This means that Meruem's nen consumption should be exponential instead of additive. Sort of like fusion in Dragon Ball, just not as insane. This is also supported earlier as Meruem consumed the nen of a random goon that he off-screened, but Pitou still noticed that Meruem had gotten stronger. Meruem also felt his own power surging after eating his aura, when this nen user should be insignificant compared to Meruem's own power. If eating this guy's nen can even remotely make his power go up a noticeable degree, then consuming the majority of Pouf and Youpi would be a massive amplification for Meruem. So both Rose Meruem and Adult Gon should be massively stronger than base Meruem, but it's hard to say how they stack up to one another. Gon might honestly still have more raw power than Meruem, considering he can still amp his power with Jajanken, but at this level, it doesn't really matter. Rose Meruem gained several new abilities from absorbing Pouf and Youpi, which give him an overwhelming advantage over Gon. Meruem was already far more intelligent than Gon, but can now use his N at the speed of light, an advanced sensory ability to help read his opponent's moves similar to Sage Mode in Naruto. Anyone who touches his N also becomes a target of spiritual message or Meruem's ability to read your emotions and intent, shown in him sensing Welfin's immense hostility and Palm's resolve. Youpi shapeshifting gave Meruem the ability to fly or shoot Rage Blast from the air. Considering Pouf said Meruem refined his spiritual message and made it superior to his own, Meruem might have even greater manipulation over his body than Youpi did, who could grow dozens of tentacles to attack his opponents and eyes to increase his field of view. He could also increase his size to amp his power or turn his arms into blades. Ultimately, Meruem just has too many abilities and so much versatility that Gon can't really do anything. He has multiple ways to read Gon before he moves and can avoid him with flight. Meruem isn't an ultra prideful smoke demon but a highly pragmatic being with a supercomputer for a brain. While he may throw hands with Gon for fun, ultimately he doesn't need to and will probably value his own life over pride. Even if Gon managed to seriously damage Meruem, he might have Pouf's ability to divide into microscopic cells and reconstitute his body. He could realistically just fly away and blast Gon from the sky with Rage Blast, and he can't really do anything. Gon definitely still wins if he catches Meruem off guard or Meruem underestimates him, or like I said earlier, if Meruem tries to fight him in hand-to-hand combat, Gon would have the advantage, but Meruem's arsenal of nen abilities, intelligence, and hacks typically will make him an insurmountable opponent for Gon most of the time.